Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lenore Fido, and I'm the Senior Editor News at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler and Jewelers of America's co-branded webinar series. Today, Molly Fallon and I are co-hosting a session on how to master Google reviews for your business. We're joined by Jay Shecker at Podium and marketing consultant Andre Savoy. Before we get the webinar started, I just wanted to let attendees know that if they have a question, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box. I'll be back at the end of the discussion to share the questions. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website Friday. Now I'm going to hand it over to Molly to get the discussion started. I'll be back to field any questions at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Lenore. Hi, Andre. Hi, Jace.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Excited to be here.
Yeah, very much so.
That's great. I wanted to get started and talk a little bit about Google ratings and SEO and how ratings affect SEO and can impact SEO, search engine optimization. Andre, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you want to start us off with that?
I have a good story. How about we start with that? So I have a friend of mine that I live just outside New Orleans and have a friend of mine who is a vice president at Google, and he's a remote person. And just to give you a sense of his level of connections and stuff, he managed, he was the Google contact for the Trump campaign both times. So that's how long he's been in the ecosystem. We're not talking politics. I'm just saying that's the level that he is, that, you know, he's got that. So over coffee about 6 months ago, he told me that Google's biggest concern that they have right now, and the biggest thing that they think that they have as a brand to leverage, is trust. And the way they are working towards developing and continuing to build that trust is by being very careful with the review system, and then being careful in how businesses are shown based on their reviews. And so what he told me is that they, at its very core, the thing that gets Google out of bed in the morning is they want you to trust the result that you see when you Google something. So what he said, he goes, we're sitting in a coffee shop. He said, if I was looking for coffee near me and there was a closer coffee shop to me, but they were either new or had fewer ratings, and then there's a coffee shop a little bit further away that has much better ratings or higher number of reviews, Google, even in the map pack, will show me the better rated coffee shop over the closer coffee shop, because they know if I get in the car and go to that coffee shop, the chances of me having a good experience are high. And so that will mean that they will trust the Google results. So that was an alarming thing to hear from them, just because we always sort of think that Google's going to show us the most local thing. And he said they're absolutely not. And so what he told me, he said, in terms of like what that means for SEO, he said, basically, I'm just going to tell you this very simply. He said, if you don't have a similar number of reviews as your competitors, Google is going to throttle your search results. And he said that very clearly. And he said, it is an arms race. You know, with this, he said, you got to do it ethically and white hat. We're going to talk about all that today, but basically, you know, that this is coming from somebody, you know, on the inside that knows what they're talking about. And so, you know, I've seen that reflected, you know, when we look at things objectively and when we just kind of search around, but that's, you know, that's straight from the horse's mouth, you know, from a vice president at Google.
Yeah. And you referenced number of reviews, the quantity. Is that also in, I know Google's algorithm is kind of a mystery, but in the factors and how they display their results, is quantity impacting that or driving that, or the actual ratings themselves? Something
It's both, you know, I mean, but what I have noticed is, you know, the businesses that have a large number of reviews typically are working at acquiring those reviews. So their reviews tend to be good, you know, because they're actively soliciting those one way or the other. They're responding to reviews. So they're, you know, I don't see a lot of businesses with, you know, 400 and 500 reviews and they're at a 3.1. You know, I don't see that very often. Although I did run into a home warranty company that will remain nameless that had 281 star reviews. Their aggregate review rating was a 1. I didn't actually think that was possible, but I actually I screenshot it. I was like, I can't be showing this to people. This is pretty bad.
Yeah, now when we're talking reviews, do the ratings themselves versus text and testimonials, is there any impact on that? Is just strict star ratings versus actual customers uploading pictures and putting in testimonials? Is there a difference between those and how they're weighted?
Jace, do you want to maybe hop in on that since you've probably seen those texts and what those numbers look like?
Yeah. No, to reiterate the point of like how Google works with reviews, to Andre's point of the local coffee shop, you got like logically also you got to think about it. If Google recommends bad businesses, people aren't going to stop using Google. So they want to recommend the businesses that people are recommending themselves. So they're going to keep pushing that. So yeah, just completely goes in line with what you were saying. As to the question of, yeah, the text, the pictures, what's included in the review, if you're not getting reviews right now, I always say just get whatever you can because it's going to make an impact. But then once you start nailing the process of asking for it, getting consistent reviews, then you can really start focusing on what are people saying? How are we doubling down on what they're saying? Are they sharing images? Because essentially, how Google works is the more you can interact with that GMB page, the more data you can put in there, the more data Google can kind of pull from to recommend you in more searches. So yes.
Okay. But for someone who's just starting at minimum with just getting those star ratings.
Yeah, don't focus on like what people are saying. Just like honestly, just ask. That's usually the first starting point is like, don't be afraid to ask. Yeah, it can be a little weird and scary at first, and you might get some feedback that you don't want, but it's better to get feedback and change than not know where you're standing.
Yeah,
Yeah, so-
and I'll add one thing just to that. What I have seen as a consultant, because I come in and work with clients and I kind of come in from the outside, and what I have seen is that the companies that make reviews, the review gathering process, part of their business procedure. In other words, this is how we operate. And this is even like a lot of companies are now the ones that are most successful that tie it to the compensation of the employees who are responsible for it. So if you're getting reviews, you get X bonus, or if you don't get reviews, you lose a piece of your commission or whatever it is. But you know, what I saw early on when I was advising jewelry clients is that they were like, well, we're struggling with reviews, but it wasn't part of their SOP. And so it was more like the salespeople were doing a favor, because oftentimes it was the salespeople or the people checking you out who were sort of the point of contact, and they were sort of being asked to do a favor to do this. But when you put it in place as a business procedure where this is how it's done, these are the expectations, these are the consequences, then it becomes the numbers skyrocket. So I think that's the part where, like, if you haven't started doing that, taking it from sort of a favor / hobby to institutionalizing it is the first step.
Yeah, let's go down that road of collecting reviews. I know, Jace, you mentioned some people aren't necessarily comfortable. That was actually when we had registrations going for this webinar, we asked some people to submit questions. That was one of the top questions, is about when is the best time to do? Is it at the point of sale? Is it afterwards? What are some best practices with collecting reviews?
Yeah. Well, whenever someone asks me this question, I always like to reply with, it honestly depends on like your business and your flow and how you want it to look. But from what we've seen over here at Podium, like data wise, the businesses who see the best results for reviews and implementing it in their flow is essentially at the end of point of sale. Essentially, that's when the customer is the happiest, when they're walking out with the item, not when they're paying their deposit, but like when they're walking out, they're seeing it for the first time. It's sparkling the best it's ever going to sparkle. Like they're stoked on it. That's the time you want to ask for it. And like ideally have them leave the review before they get in their car, because as soon as they get in their car or they walk out, their phone's going to ring. If they've got kids in the car, they're going to get distracted. Like you're never going to capture that. So yeah, having the salesperson ask and be like, just, you don't have to do a big push. Just say, hey, it really helps us out as a local business. If you could leave us a review, I'm going to shoot you a quick text, or here's a link to leave that review. It's just like as simple as that.
Yeah, and I'll add two things to that. at a very high level, number one is don't overthink the review ask. So, you know, a lot of people saying like they feel like they need to have this big preamble towards their ask for review, and a, you know, I still see that, and a quick and dirty, you know, thanks for your business, please take a minute, because people know what reviews are now. So that's number one. Number two, if you're relying on email, you're missing out. You know, like Podium's text-based, and it's got to be a text-based deal, because text message will get the biggest response. So keep it simple, do a text. And then the third thing is, you know, if you have a jewelry store and it's a storefront business, you know, leverage QR codes, you know, put them in different spots, you know, near the register or whatever, where somebody can snap a QR code and leave a review. So, you know, I talk to a lot of businesses who are having success with, you know, they'll print those QR codes or on something else physically where people can scan them. But those are three, you know, like practical points to that, you know, that I think we've seen just have big results. So.
Yeah, I will say the only time I'm not someone who leaves a lot of reviews, and the only time I have done it was when I was at the register and they had a little placard with a QR code. And they were like, before you leave, can you please scan this? And those have been the only handful of times I've left a review.
Yeah, and I feel like it's becoming more and more common and not offensive. Especially if it's presented in the correct way.
I was
Uh,
going
So
to add, oh,
yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
please.
I was going to say, I mean, I work for Podium. I talk about Google reviews every day, all day. When I go out into my community and I shop there, like leaving a review for a business doesn't cross my mind unless I get asked or I see the QR code or something.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, you know, the other thing I heard at that conference this week was interesting, is they talked about this. They said the business said that they noticed that they were starting to get a lot of 4-star reviews, and the 4-star review was positive. So I said, you know, had a great time, you know, whatever. And then they're like, I had a positive 4-star review, and they're like, well, what do we need to get a 5-star review? And then they would call the customer, text them, and they're like, I guess I could switch it to 5. Yeah, sure. So the change they made was they just started adding, you know, leave us a 5-star review. Just that little change it from getting some 4s from to just mostly 5. So even just asking, you know, if you had a 5-star experience, leave your 5-star review. And, you know, if that's on the QR code right next to you, I mean, because they said, you know, it's just kind of funny how people like want to be mid with their reviews. It's like, get a 5-star, just leave it, you know? So even just that little tip by itself was, you know, it's a 25% increase in the rating.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I know, Andre, you mentioned having this be part of your business practices and your standard operating procedure, and incentivizing potentially employees to help with that. That's something that you mentioned. Do you know if there's any regulations regarding that or any guidelines about that?
Well, when we talk about this, you know, what I have seen written down is that it becomes part of the employee handbook. You know, that as a salesperson, your job is to follow up to make sure the review is obtained. So I haven't seen, I don't read that to look at that as review buying. You know, that's just part of the customer communication and follow-up process. So and the biggest difference from that is that it created awareness that the salesperson knows that in order to complete the sale and get paid their full commission, you know, collecting this review was just like getting a receipt or making sure they had their warranty or knew when they were supposed to come back in for their first cleaning, you know, any of those kind of things that are normal customer service duties in order to get paid to consider a sale complete. And so that's really what I meant in terms of incentivizing it, was just putting it into SOPs that this is part of your job and not a favor, you know. And I think that's where the mindset shift came, that people like, hey, I still haven't got your review yet, you know, and just kind of that extra little effort. Because again, you know, you can set that up as a company, but I mean, if you've got, you know, like the store, you know, store we're talking about, they do 10, 12 million a year. They've got 15 salespeople, you know, that nudge from the salesperson that comes to the customer says, sure would appreciate if you left us a review. That customer knows that employee kind of needs that review, you know? So if you did a good job and they're, you know, okay, great, I'll leave it for you, you know, but they're being asked then to do that.
Yeah, and there's definitely something to be said for authenticity and having the reviews feel authentic. You started to touch on earlier white hat. Do you want to, for maybe those who don't know what white hat or black hat practices are, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. So white hat just goes back to the old cowboy movie days, where the good guy always wore a white hat and the bad guy had a black hat on. So, in the SEO world, black hat means, sneaky or underhanded or something you're not supposed to do. And so after 20 years, I've just come to the decision that there's nothing worth, taking a risk of getting on Google's bad side for anything. So just don't do it. We never encourage people like I always get asked, should we run a contest for reviews? The answer is no. Don't do it. Don't any of the slimy stuff that you've heard or been suggested in terms of how to incentivize a customer to give you a review, in general, we're not in favor of, because what I have found is that it just comes down to the business practice and whether or not the reviews are being systematically done as part of the business process. When they are, the process takes care of itself. When they're not, that's when people rely on, well, what if I give away this piece in exchange for a review? Or what if we do, give away a gift card, or that stuff usually doesn't work. But I just think if you're thinking that, then you're missing the point that it needs to be a process in your business and not a campaign gimmick to get reviews.
Yeah. Jace, do you have any other tips for or best practices for getting reviews?
Yeah. Andres could nail in it, honestly. Like you can't do an incentive of, hey, if you leave us a 5-star review, we'll give you X amount off, or you'll receive this thing. You can't have people only leave 5-star reviews to incentivize them that way. So if you do any sort of incentive for the customer to leave a review, it has to be just for a review. It can't be for a 5-star or a high review like that. So, but yeah, best practices, like it really does come down to just asking and making sure that your salespeople are asking for it as well. And then the other part of it is making it really easy for your customer to actually leave the review. So like the QR code or using Podium where it's super easy. They get the text. Yeah, just make sure, it's part of the process.
Now, how important, and we'll get into negative reviews in a minute, but how important is it to respond to reviews? And is that factored in at all for Google, of having someone on your staff respond, whether they're positive or negative, to reviews?
Yes, responding to reviews is very important. So there's essentially 5 things that Google's looking for that affects it. The first one is, what's your overall star rating? Like, how many do you have? What's the quality? Like, what are they saying? How many review? And then frequency, so consistency. And then the fifth part is if the business is responding. And each of those are weighted differently with how Google works. So yes, responding to the reviews, once again, because it's every time you're interacting with your GMB page, the Google Map Pack, your business is sitting there raising its hand to Google being like, hey, we're over here, we're providing great service, like put us at the top of the list, like we want to help more people. So when you respond, you're interacting with it again, as well as there's another big key part where if you haven't done it recently, click on your GMB page and you'll see where all the reviews are at. You'll see at the top the list of keywords that are popping in, keywords that Google's using. So now when it goes to responding, if you start populating those keywords, you're going to be doubling down on keywords that Google's looking for. So like engagement rings, watches.
Your town, your location.
Yeah, customer service.
And how do you recommend to your clients that they handle negative reviews?
I was so hoping you'd bring this up.
I give my answer. The Podium way is just bury the bad reviews with 20 good reviews. Because you also got to think about it. If you're not asking, the only people who leave a review are the completely pissed off people or the really, really happy people. So like in all reality, you want to capture that middle 90% of people who don't leave those reviews. So if you're getting those, like Andre said earlier, you very rarely finds a business that has hundreds of reviews and has less than a 4-star rating, I think is what you said. So yeah, as long as you're asking everybody and you're actually doing great customer service, which 99.9% of everyone is doing, you're going to see results. And like, don't focus on the negative reviews, because that's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. And I think Andre's got a lot to go cover with you on that front.
Yeah, well, that's where I think reviews cross over from SEO and Google and reputation into branding. And so this is my favorite thing, because I can tell you, out of all the stuff that gets business owners worked up, it's a bad review. It's the funniest thing how they feel like personally attacked, or like somebody just called their mom fat or something. It's like, it's the funniest thing. So here's the thing that I always remind people, and Jace can probably back this up. People don't expect to see 5-star reviews, a 5.0 rating if you got hundreds of reviews. People know that you're going to have some people you just can never make happy. Some customers just don't work out. So a 5.0 rating is not the goal, because it's not realistic. And so the mindset shift number one is for people to welcome a couple of bad reviews, because it's going to make your profile look believable. So I think that's number one. And number two, I heard this again at the conference this week. People told us that, he goes, well, I have customers who are booking who said that they came in based on how we responded to our negative reviews. And so I've seen a lot of people, like, they'll go and kind of scan, look for they'll swap the ratings to look for the 1-star review and then go read those to see how the business is responding when there's a conflict of some kind. And that's where I think you don't have to fall on your sword and say, we're sorry, come on in, we'll give you a free elephant. But you can, what you don't want to do is what I see some business owners doing, saying, well, screw you, we don't have any record of you being a customer, and I don't know what you're talking about. All this. I mean, I've seen all of that. So somewhere in between those two, a happy medium is probably in order for that. But I think not taking it personally and just welcoming a couple of bad reviews, because if you've got a 4.9 or 4.8, that's plenty good enough to get you over the line in most cases, especially if you have a high volume of reviews. But you can't let your ego get in the way. And I think there's a lot of thin-skinned business owners in the world.
So one of my questions was going to be, do you recommend responding to negative reviews? It sounds like, Andre, you're saying, yes, you should.
Yeah, I think you got to respond to all of them. I just think you got to learn how to respond to the negative ones without it turning into a flame out war, because that doesn't help anybody. But people will read your responses to that. I heard that loud and clear this week. So
yeah, to that point, yeah, I've also heard it from business owners where they've had people come in because they had a customer who actually sorted by the lowest on the reviews, and they wanted to read, and they read the response, and they're like, I'm going to come to you because of how you handled that situation. So like, it happens where people are going to see, because nobody's perfect. Like, let's be real. Something's going to happen. You're going to drop the ball, or the customer may think you dropped the ball some way, and they're going to leave that review. So yeah, don't freak out on them. Just respond like you would. And yeah, the 4.8, 4.9 star rating, to be honest, that's what I always recommend too. I'm like, it's better to have a 4.8, 4.9, because once again, it shows you're real, and it also gives customers the ability to see if something goes wrong, how is this business going to handle it and make it up to me? So like, worst case scenario, what's going to happen if that happens to me?
yeah, and I think the one exception to the rule about responding to negative reviews is, I actually had a jeweler last year, had a customer get mad about something. Don't remember what. It wasn't, they didn't buy a ring from them. So it was just something minor. And then that customer went and got like 6 or 7 people to leave a bad review. And so within the course of 24 hours, they had 6 or 7 bad reviews. And the 6 or 7, one of them was from the customer person who had been in the showroom. The other 6 or 7 were not. So that's like a situation where, like, I had to actually calm the business owner down, because he was like, he had his gloves on, he's ready to go. But, we wound up responding to the first one and reporting the other ones. And, that's where, again, handling it calmly, we got rid of 6 out of the 7 bad reviews, just because Google could see, and this goes back to trust, Google could see one person did it and then a thread kind of coming out of it. And so that it happened real quickly like that. And so, that's where you just keep your cool and handle that stuff as it comes up. But it does, I mean, I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. It does happen.
Can you touch on, Andre, you just mentioned reporting, reviews that aren't authentic or false and how to handle those?
Yeah, Google's got a button now. You can do it right inside the console where you can report it. As with anything, if you're going to contact Google, be as matter of fact about it as you can and give them facts, because it's somebody reading on the other side to just look and see if they can check boxes to deal with this or not. So nobody's emotionally looking to take sides on your case here. So, and then just submit it and be done with it. If they remove it, if they don't, you still have the same job tomorrow, which is, go build some new ones. So, again, just don't get overly hung up on it one way or the other. And then, like I said, my observation is that Google has gotten much better about identifying that, because I have seen businesses getting legitimate reviews and sometimes they get removed just because of there's some kind of pattern, and maybe Jace knows more about this in terms of, they got X number of reviews very quickly and blah, blah, blah. So that's, they're taking that very seriously, that they don't want you to get attacked by a spam bot or, angry mob, sending a group text to their friends to leave a bad review all at once. So.
Yeah, I've seen that happen occasionally. There's no clear reason as to why Google will flag that. The one common one is like if you get a bunch all at the same time, Google will usually flag that one. But yeah, don't spend too much time worrying about all the negative reviews. You're going to spend a ton of time and not see that many results. Whereas if you get more positive reviews, you're just helping the business by getting more traction and more visibility as well.
How about, I know AI is a hot topic. Any tools or thoughts on using AI to assist with managing reviews or responding to reviews, reputation management?
Jace, you want to take that?
Yep.
I actually don't know what Podium's got for that.
Yeah, no, this is actually a really big thing. So Podium's primarily using AI right now on when it comes to the responding of the reviews. So in Podium, we have it where essentially it has the rating and what the customer left on the review. There's a button, or you can have it done automatically where you just hit the suggest a reply button. The AI will see what they wrote, see the rating, and it'll customize a response based on what the customer left. So if it's just a blank 5-star rating, you're probably going to get a pretty generic response of, hey, thank you so much for leaving a 5-star rating. But if they write out words, this is where the AI is going to double down on all of those keywords that Google is actually looking for. And what I see most is a lot of times people, when they go to reply, they're using a template to go through them and do it really quickly. Like, that's good because you're doing the touch point with Google, but customers kind of see through that where they're like, oh, someone's just checking a box. They're not necessarily actually like interacting here. So this is nice because it kind of takes the thinking out of it, where you can still use the template to a degree, but it's customizing it while also giving you the ability to edit it before actually posting it. So I always liken it to back in school when the teacher gave you an essay to write. The hardest part was always trying to figure out the topic or the rough draft. This is where the AI will come in and create the topic or the rough draft that then you can polish and hit submit on.
Interesting.
I will say, that's one thing, because we were chatting about the AI a little bit before, when we were in the waiting room, and I personally feel like, because I'm not anti-AI, we're using it a lot in our business, but I feel like that response to a review, I mean, if you've got thousands of them and you need to do it, that's one thing, but I still feel like that's a little bit maybe one area that, I can tell you, like when people leave us 5-star reviews, I respond directly, only because, to me, that's like somebody thanking you. And so I just feel like at some point that, maybe I'll trust them a little bit more to respond at that, and this, if I had hundreds of them to deal with, maybe I'd feel differently. But I do think that there's some benefit in doing it manually, only because somebody can see that and maybe just log that in the back of their head for next time when they talk to the customer or whatever. But I do think that's one of those areas that, maybe you do manually, especially in the beginning, if you haven't done a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, That's usually what I say about AI is like, how do you want to use it? What do you want to use it for? Like, you still want to have that personal human touch.
Yeah.
Andre, do you have any examples of any of your customers who are creative things and using their reviews in their marketing or using them themselves?
Oh yeah. I feel like I tell every client that I consult with at this point, I tell every client we do it, we look at it and see like, can we become the top rated jeweler in the market? Because I have a couple of clients that I work with who are the top rated jeweler in their market, and we beat the competitors over the head with it. I feel like that is the one marketing weapon that no one can take from you, and that you can, it's not like a lot of times we do marketing fluff. We can say we're the biggest, we have the best selection, we have the finest quality, we have the lowest price, whatever. Like you can say a lot of things that people can't necessarily prove. But when you say I'm the top rated jeweler in market A or B or whatever it is, and somebody can go and Google that and say, whoa, they really are. That to me is maybe the strongest thing you could say as a, forget jewelry, any kind of business, to say, you know, you're the best by, as proven by Google reviews, because everybody trusts Google. So I've, you know, talked to every client I talk to. It's like, you know, what's going to take to get you to where you can say that. And the clients I have that do it, we put it everywhere. We build marketing campaigns around it. We run it in their ads, their digital space. It goes on billboards if they're in that stuff. I mean, I'm just saying it becomes a weapon to use in marketing at that point, because it just gets away. I mean, everything in the jewelry space is about intangible things that are very hard to prove. But if you're the top rated, you can prove that, you know, and I just think it's a really important social tool. And so it becomes one of those things where, you know, you begin owning the SEO world, because, you know, usually showing up really high in the map packs, you've got a really strong brand proposition at that point. So, I mean, I think, you know, and then you get your website, you put your reviews on your website, you know, clear up at the top, you know, and embed them there. So, I mean, there's just a lot of opportunities you can use that. And on the other hand, you know, if you're that person that's got 15 reviews and you're competing against somebody that's got 800, I mean, you're hiding from it at that point. You're hoping they don't, you know, because we'll see it. We run an ad, a social media ad, get somebody to the website, they look around, then they go Google the business name and they go, you know, they're just not up to speed. And you know, to remember, if a customer doesn't know you, they're evaluating you based on what they find when they Google the brand name. So, you know, that's a really important part of the whole thing there, to see how that shows up.
Yeah.
And I think it's a huge, huge, huge deal from a marketing standpoint.
Just to add on to that, it's like the one area where it's like, don't take our word for it. We have thousands of customers who are saying the same thing. Like, take advantage.
Yeah. Chase, do you have any recommendations for metrics that should be tracked for employees related to reviews?
Yeah, you're referring to like just being able to track.
Yeah, if you're going to have this be part of your standard business practices and incentivize employees, or kind of tie it to goals, what kind of metrics do you recommend are the most important?
Yeah. So the most important metric is just the one that we track is just how many times has the employee actually asked. Is like, are we asking everyone? Because like, to getting someone to leave a review and having it tied to their compensation, like you could also run into the situation of like, well, what if they've already left us a review? I can't have it, like, I don't want to be, as the employee, be negatively punished for that. So like, that's where we come in, and like, we'll not necessarily like discrediting what you said, Andre, but it's like, we want to just make sure that they're asking, because that's usually the number one thing. Is like, the stores that see results when it comes to reviews are the stores that have it automated, where it's just happening in the background for them, or they have a really good process where employees are incentivized and they're asking every single time. Like, other than that, if someone's like, hey, we're going to make a push for reviews for a month or two, like, they're going to see results for a little bit, but then it's going to drop off once again, and they're going to start falling in the rankings. So yeah, the consistency piece of like, we want to make sure that every employee is asking, and then we can also track if how many are converting into actual reviews. And another way that I've seen is anytime in a review that an employee is mentioned in the review. So like we've moved beyond just getting the review. Now we're trying to get the context better in there and actually having the review say the employee's name. We're able to track that too back to the employee, and then using like a gift card bonus, or like for every review you get an extra $25, something like that, which I've seen be very successful.
Yeah. I think those are all the questions that I have. I guess I'd just like to leave it open to ask each of you if you have one top tip or something that everyone can leave with and kind of implement in their business right away. What would that be?
I'll go first. I'll just say that I tell every business client we work with that reviews should be, 1 or 1A at the top of your list as the business owner, to make sure that you are owning that project and driving it. Because I firmly believe that part of the business is the part that is going to be the most unique, like what comes out of those reviews. And it's your one chance to really build an asset that doesn't cost you. Like, you can go hire a marketing agency, pay for Google, do whatever you want to do. But like, that asset is one that you will build and grow. As long as you follow the rules, it will always be yours. And I think it's the biggest. I think if you're a local business, which all the jewelers on this call are, if you're a local business, it's the most important thing for you to make sure that you have nailed down, buttoned up, and is top of the line priority. It is the most important thing that you work on, and don't subjugate it to anything else. Because I can tell you, I work with a jeweler in one market and we run ads and the ads kill it, but they're near the top or doing well with reviews. We go to another market where we got a guy that's, doesn't have a really good review presence. So we run the exact same stuff, and their stuff doesn't perform nearly as well. I mean, I see it in the numbers, and I just think that the consumer today is gonna go look at your business profile before they do business with you, unless they're coming from a referral or somebody that, has already done that. Like if somebody's referring to their favorite jeweler they've had for 20 years, chances are they're not Googling you to check out your reviews. But outside of that, every customer you acquire, I think you could pretty much be sure they're going to go look at that at some point. And that's a night and day difference. I just see it over and over again, reflected in numbers. The better the reviews, the better everything performs. And I just think it's got to be job number one as a business owner to make sure that's being handled.
Okay.
That's kind of funny. That was actually going to be mine too. Was like,
I got you. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, to the same degree of like, if you're not asking, or you don't even know, you don't have a link, you don't have a QR code, you don't sending text messages to ask for reviews, that would be that's number one. You have to have some sort of process to get reviews for all of the reasons you just said, not paying, it's marketing, you're growing your business, it's natural organic growth, getting real-time feedback from your customers. And even if it is a referral, they're probably going to punch you into Google Maps to get directions, and they're going to subconsciously see your reviews and your ratings at that point in time too. And so that's another trust building thing, where if they get a referral from their friend and then they punch it into Google Maps and they've got 15 reviews and a 4.6 as an example, they may not say it or think it, but subconsciously they're just I wonder what I'm getting myself into. It would be something that I would personally think. So it's just put an emphasis on reviews. I just did a quick Google search. 46% of all Google searches done are for local people looking for local businesses on the daily basis. And Google reviews are 34% of the algorithm that Google is looking for. And then there's the 5 categories of the overall, the quantity, the quality, the frequency, and then if you're responding. So it's if you're not doing it, start doing it. If you're doing it already, let's start focusing on pictures. What are people saying? How are we responding to it? Getting more granular on that side of things.
And just Jace, just to add for that, you know, if you're on the call and I organize a few of the names on the call, you know, if you're on the call and you're doing a pretty good job with reviews, you know, set a big audacious goal, you know, go look at who has more reviews than you and you know, look at your numbers and can you, if you really worked your database and if you really got like really disciplined about it on the front end, could you go for that and get yourself the top rated, you know, claim? I mean, why not? I mean, it's, you know, I think that's a great challenge if you're in that mid range where you know you've done okay, but you're not at the top. You know, maybe you got a big giant in there, or you got a mall jeweler or something. You know, that does like 5,000 watch batteries a week. I mean, you know, it's not always apples to apples, but I mean, if you're in the diamond jewelry space, you know, I think you know who those local competitors are.
Give yourself a chance. Get in the fight.
Yeah,
Yep.
great tips. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was a really interesting discussion. As a reminder, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. I'm going to kick off the Q&A with some questions that were submitted beforehand. So this one here is asking, how many good reviews do you need to overcome a bad one?
I can
I
jump
guess in
on that
terms
one.
of like ranking.
It's going to depend on the math. Like, how many total do you have? Like, if you have 500, one negative review, it's probably not going to make a dent. But if you have 10 reviews and you have one negative one, you just got to do the math on how many more is it going to take to get back up to the same level. So it depends.
Yeah, I
Gotcha. So it
agree.
depends on.
Yeah, it's strictly a matter of your business. You know, if you've got 2,000 reviews and you get a bad one, it's not a big deal. If you've got 10 and you get a bad one, you know, you've got a problem. So
10%.
Right. And to your earlier point, you can ask for some better reviews to sort of push that down a little lower and push up your rating.
Yeah, don't fixate on the one bad one. Just focus on keep moving forward, get more reviews to, yeah.
Gotcha. This next question says, if the customer doesn't have a Gmail account, what is the best way to get them to leave a review? I guess as an add-on, do you need a Gmail account to leave a Google review?
You do. Yeah, you have to have an account, a Gmail account to leave a review. Same thing with Facebook. Pretty much all of them require that.
well, the only modifier to that would be that, you know, if you can register, like, let's say you're a Hotmail user, you can register your Hotmail account with Google for something. So I have seen users, like we see it all the time, that have some kind of a non-Gmail account or even your work email address. So I think the biggest thing is if it's associated with a Google account of some kind. So, you know, I do see most people. So I think that number is dwindling pretty quickly of people that don't have a Google account at this point, only because you know, you're getting prompted at almost every time you sign up for anything now, you're getting prompted to log in with your Google account. And that's, you know, whether that's making a reservation for dinner or signing up for a software package or, you know, just about, I mean, my school stuff now, like my kids' school stuff wants me to register with my Google account. So, you know, which brings up the whole thing, like you better secure your Google stuff. That's a whole nother conversation with security, but,
Sure.
but yeah, I mean, I just think that it's not necessarily don't get fixated on do they have gmail.com at the end. There's an option to get a Google account tied to anything email wise.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not
Good
as
to know.
common of a roadblock these days, to Andre's point.
Gotcha. Yeah, Gmail is pretty popular. How many reviews should a business aim for each month? Is there a good goal that you should set?
To start off, just like it's funny because I'm just going to keep saying like it depends on your business model and like your business
Sure.
once again, but like a good goal is like 3 to 5 reviews a month. But it also depends on your volume because like if you're a mall location doing 5,000 watch repairs, 3 to 5, you're not doing what you should be doing. On average, essentially what we see here at Podium is a 30% conversion rate when it comes to asking and reviews without like prompting or anything. So like shoot for 30%. Like the better question would be, are we asking everybody to leave a review? More so.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I think that is it for my questions. Do either of you have closing remarks before I wrap it up? Anything else you guys would like to add?
No, not here.
No, just a plug for Podium. If you're not looking into reviews, we'd love to keep talking with you and take a look at it more closely.
Fair enough. Well, thank you guys. That's it for today's Q&A. I really do appreciate you all joining us.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.